Good morning. I hereby call to order. This is the March 21st, 2019 public hearing of the City of Prescott Board of Adjustment. The board members we have here today are Tony Teeters, Johnny Forquar, is Patty Braden?
Yes.
Patty? And Raymond Everett?
Only Ray.
Ray is here.
Raymond is only if I'm in trouble.
Okay, we'll see how that works out. My name is Larry Meads. Our chairman is away, so I'll be the interim chairman today if there is no objection. Hearing none, we'll go on. We also have Michelle Chavez here as the recording secretary. Good morning. Other planning and zoning staff members present are George Worley, the planning manager. We have Katie Peterson here, the community planner. And we have Bren Stotler, the director of the department. Matt Podrecki is not here yet, anyway, and I don't see a council person here. Mr. George Sheets is out in the audience. Thank you, George. This is an open public hearing and is being tape recorded and videotaped by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representatives of the public media, the public, local cable and or radio stations, and may also be rebroadcast. The number of board members present today is 5. It will require 4 votes for a majority. All parties wishing to be heard on an issue are required to raise their hands and be recognized by the chair prior to speaking. Speakers will be expected to state their name and address for the record so that we may know who is speaking and be able to contact them at a later date if necessary. Please turn off your cell phones now and other electronic devices, or at least the ringers. If you haven't already done so, please sign the attendance roster before leaving the meeting so that we may contact you if necessary. Well, now we'll proceed with the approval of the minutes from 2 previous meetings. And I'll entertain a motion to do that now. We'll start with the minutes of the December 20th, 2018 meeting. If you've had an opportunity to look at that. Does anybody have any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the minutes from January 17th.
We've got a motion and a second to approve these minutes. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 Both?
Those minutes are passed. Now we'll look at the minutes from the Board of Adjustment meeting of January 17th, 2019. I was not present, so I will not vote on those minutes. And yet I have a question. Maybe somebody here can enlighten me about this, because the applicant was applying for a conditional use permit for a tattoo business, and yet on page 2 it talks about the building being remodeled and they plan to open a quick serve barbecue restaurant. Oh, 2 separate cases. I see. Okay. That explains the 1 and the 2. Very good. Are there any other comments or questions on those minutes? Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve minutes of January 17th.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve those minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, what do we have here now? Before us is a conditional use permit request for a relocated fuel dispensing facility per the Land Development Code, Section 2.3, and the Land Use Table. Service stations are allowed in the Business General Zoning District by conditional use permit. In compliance with LDC Section 9.1.2 Common Procedure Pre-Application Conference and Section 9.3.3 Conditional Use Permits, Conditional Use Application Process, the applicant completed a meeting with staff prior to submitting the conditional use permit application for the proposed use at this site and has met all other requirements of Section 9.1 Common Procedure. Before we hear from anyone in the audience, I want to see if there are any comments or questions from the board members today.
Katie Peterson with Community Development Department. I have a PowerPoint. I can
Oh, thank you.
go through if you'd like me to do that
Be
first.
very useful.
Okay. Shall I start?
Proceed.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Lamerson. Appreciate you showing up.
Sorry for being late.
Not a problem. We just,
Duty calls.
your timing was good.
Also, as a reminder, make sure your microphones are close to your mouth
Close,
so that you end up on the
yes.
recording.
Thank you.
This again is for conditional use permit CUP 19-001. That's located at 3911 East State Route 69 and covers 3 parcels. This is what's known as the Costco site. I'll give an overview, including a summary of the proposal, the site, showing both the existing and the proposed. I'll go over just briefly the conditional use permit criteria from the Land Development Code, City of Prescott, and then what we've received in terms of public comments so far. So this is located just south of State Route 69 and at the intersection of Walker Road. The existing gas station just west of Costco is shown there where it says on this aerial photo I'm showing existing gas pump facility and proposed parking. So that's where the existing gas station is located. The proposal is to relocate that gas facility on the adjacent parcel just up the hill there. It's a slightly higher grade, and that's the proposed gas pump facility with additional parking just further south of that, just southwest of that along Walker Road. I have a picture of just to remind folks of the existing site where the gas station is next to the Costco warehouse and store, and then the proposed site. That's where there's an existing restaurant building and a vacant lot. And as a summary, the business general zoning district from our land development code does allow what's defined as service stations, gas, commonly known as gas stations, with conditional use permit approved by the Board of Adjustment. So the proposal is for a conditional use permit for this adjacent site. There is an existing conditional use permit for the existing Costco store and gas station that's tied to the land, and that applies only to those parcels. So this request, to clarify, is for a new conditional use permit to allow a new relocated fuel dispensing facility and the additional parking from the existing parcel to 2 adjacent parcels just south, a little further from State Route 69. The total project area is that's proposed as covers 102,088 square feet. It involves removal of the existing gas facility and the underground tanks, which are on site under that existing CUP. 12 new gas dispensing pumps are proposed with 24 fueling positions under a 9,631 square foot canopy. The staff report and the applicant's submittal for the application include clarification that the design will be consistent with the existing Costco store. They're also proposing the 5 new underground storage tanks including 3 new 40,000 gallon tanks, 1 new 20,000 gallon tank, and 1 new 3,500 gallon tank. Just to go over the site details, they're proposing a single direction circulation bypass lane between each of the dispenser islands, additional 7-foot maneuvering space for cars between the center and the front dispensers, a new controller enclosure, 4 remote fill ports, and then an additional 56,000 square feet of landscape area. This would include landscaped setbacks along Walker Road and Carricio Lane, 45 feet of landscape setback space along Walker Road and 52 feet along Carricio Lane. And then the proposal for new parking is to add 94 new parking spaces to the total parking area on the whole Costco site, including this new gas station. So there'd be a total of 751 parking spaces. And that's on this whole site where the existing Costco is, as well as the proposed gas station facility. So here you'll see their site plan just south of State Route 69. You'll see where I have shown where the existing gas facility is. They're proposing additional parking spaces in place of that existing gas station. And then the proposed gas station facility. And below that, just south of that is some more additional parking. Looking a little closer at the site plan, it looks like the site ingress and egress is still off of Walker Road from what they're anticipating or intending. A different entry just further south from State Route 69 off of Walker Road. Circulation would go there where you see the arrow pointing entry into stacking area dispensers. On the site plan, they've shown arrows indicating the direction of the flow of traffic to the pumps, and then exiting out. So that's the one direction circulation on that new proposed site that they're intending. The stacking plan refers to the cars lining up for the gas pumps. So looking a little closer, you'll see they've got the stop sign, do not enter there to the south, and you can see the directional arrows indicating the direction of cars going to the gas pumps. Going over the conditional use permit criteria from the Land Development Code, section 9.3.5. It's compatible, what they're proposing is compatible with existing uses on State Route 69, the sort of business, general business, regional uses. There is an adjacent residential neighborhood to the west. So any impacts or expected impacts and mitigations that their proposals seems to speak to include the fact that the proposed parcel is higher in elevation than the existing, so it may be more visible. The lighting will be required to comply with our night sky regulations. So again, if this is approved, once it comes in as a building permit application and engineering permit applications, then at that time staff would look in more detail at those kinds of details before approving. It would have to comply with land development code standards as well as other code standards in the city. But the lighting would be required to comply. Primary site access is proposed, as I mentioned, from Walker Road. So that's the same as the existing facility in terms of general traffic flow in the area, with 24 pump positions proposed, increased from the existing 12. They're proposing increasing that car stacking area where the cars line up for the gas station. And their intention with that is to reduce traffic backup, as they indicated in their application, back up onto Walker Road. Additional parking spaces for the adjacent Costco warehouse retail site and near pumps. So they seem to be attempting to address maybe a shortage of parking on some days at the Costco site. Section 9.3.6 additional conditions. At the time, as I mentioned, of the building permit review, proposed lighting details would be reviewed for compliance with night sky regulations and lighting. The board may impose additional conditions for this permit. And I've included in the staff report, and I won't read through all of this, but it explains that conditional use permit per section 9.3.7C can have an expiration date imposed. Conditional use permits are also revocable. So the idea is they must comply with any conditions in order to retain the permit for use. Conditional use permit criteria, section 9.3.8. Conditional use permit approvals also have an appeal period. So there's a 30-day appeal period after there's a decision made by the board, whether it's today or on another day. There is a 30-day appeal period before the decision is considered final.
And that appeal is to city council?
The appeal would be to the court system.
Thank you.
This is because this is a quasi-judicial board with the city. Appeals would go to court.
Okay.
We did receive some public comments. As of today, we received 2 inquiries at the public counter about the proposal and 1 phone inquiry with emailed letter of comments and concerns. So that letter has been provided to all of the board members by email and hard copy today. To summarize what we've heard questions and concerns about circulation around and within the site, concerns about lighting, the impact of lighting, and additionally for the adjacent residential neighborhood specifically, concerns that were raised in the letter and in phone call included health impacts, impact on quality of life, traffic and lighting impacts, public safety and crime risks, additional sidewalk crossings that may be required or a result of vehicles that would impact pedestrians and bicyclists and their safety, and also safety hazards with concerns about the risk of leaking underground tanks, and then also adequate time for the public to respond. So that's what we've heard so far from the public. We followed the code requirements for public notification. So we post on site and publish in the newspaper 15 days in advance. And then usually we send the letter out to residents. We're required to do a 300-foot radius around the site. With this project, we chose to expand that to a 1,000-foot radius for the mailed notification. And that usually goes out a week ahead of time before the meeting.
Can you tell us how many residents were included in that 1,000-foot radius?
I've got the list in the file. Michelle, do you remember offhand?
I believe we had 113 addresses that we mailed to.
Okay. And that would include the addresses of property owners across State Route 69.
Okay.
So today, what's before you is the Board of Adjustment motion that you may make. So the move would be to either approve conditional use permit 19-001, public service gas in a business general zoning district, or 2, approve conditional use permit CUP 19-001, the surface gas station in a business general zoning district with conditions that you may choose to impose, or you may deny today the conditional use permit 19-001, service gas station in business general zoning district. Alternately, the Board of Adjustment does have the option, if you choose to make a motion to postpone action, so you don't have to take action today, to approve or not approve or approve with conditions. You can postpone to a later hearing date if you choose. So we have the site plan and more details that were included in the application. I believe some of the residents chose to be here today to speak, so there may be some folks from the community that may like to speak, and then also representatives from Costco. are present to answer questions.
Very well. I appreciate your presentation. I do have a question in regards to the night sky lighting. Would that be a part of the conditional use, or is that not considered a conditional use item?
You can impose whatever conditions you deem appropriate. Our land development code does have regulations regarding lighting. This site is unique because it is, again, at a little bit higher elevation and a visible position with an adjacent residential neighborhood. So our current regulations about shielding of lighting may work a little bit different because it's set up higher from both Walker Road and State Route 69.
And I saw when I stopped by to look at the larger set of plans, they had a landscape plan. Is that something that you can put on the screen for us?
Yes, just 1 second. This is the landscape concept plan that the applicant submitted with their application. At this point, it's conceptual. If this is approved, once they submit their building permit application, they'll need to include a full landscape plan detailing all of these details and clarifying the square footage of total area, plant types, distancing of plants.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Ms. Peterson at this point? We may ask you to come back up.
Okay.
I'd like to see if the Costco representative could come forward.
Morning.
Good morning.
My name's Sean Anderson from Barghausen Engineers, 18215 76 or 72nd Avenue South, Kent, Washington, 90832. Hope I got that right.
Where was that in Washington?
Kent, Washington.
Camp Washington.
Yeah, so just about 20-minute drive south of Seattle. So we're the planning and also tank and piping design team for the project, and here to answer any questions. But also, I guess, to speak generally about the intent of the project is to try to add some clarification as to why Costco's doing this. The new facility is obviously larger, and we're also taking advantage of this additional piece of land to the south of the existing. And the reason for the project is to create a facility that's going to act more or operate more efficiently than the existing facility, because it's adding new dispensers to the existing membership, which allows for, I guess, more capacity to process those existing members, or in other words, get them through the line faster. So rather than sitting in a queue waiting for a dispenser to open, we now have more dispensers available. So that's just a great benefit to the existing membership, and really ultimately the driver. But additional benefits from this plan are the parking that will be added to the north where the existing fill facility is. That's the true new parking, but then you can almost call it acquisition of parking to the south. That's an existing parking lot, but it will be restriped for use. That will essentially provide employee parking, which is going to allow for the employees that now park closer to the warehouse now to park a little further back, freeing up those additional stalls closer to the warehouse. So again, a member benefit. All of this is just a way for Costco to continually improve the site, improve it for current members, but then also for any future members. As far as some of the points that were raised, both during the staff review and then I guess to address some of the comments, the new layout will continue to utilize the existing access points to that property. So the entrance off of Walker, the other entrance off of, I believe it's Caricio, if I pronounce that correctly. But then also a third entrance that passes through that southern parking lot. And the intent for the site is that members will be able to access from any three of those points. Typically, there's a strong relationship between visits to the warehouse and the gas station, so you might see some more use of that entrance from Caricio Lane, but that also allows that traffic to stay internal to the site or off Walker. And as far as the access through the parking lot, that will mainly be used by the fueling truck, mainly because it's the most grade access to the fuel facility. So we anticipate the truck would come in off Walker, take that second exit off of Walker, that left, take a left into the parking lot, and then just kind of circulate through, make its fuel drop, and then exit back out safely. So that's the way that the site's been laid out, designed in terms of the grades that are out there to date. Just one of the other topics that came up, lighting. The facility lighting is going to use flat lens LED lights that are very effective in cutoff and maintaining light spillage. So the way that we produced a photometric plan as part of the application, which demonstrated that the light from the facility is going to meet all of the city requirements for limiting spill, but then also the new parking lot lighting is going to be designed specific to the site to ensure that it's also limiting any glare or spill to the adjoining residences. So it'll be largely consistent with what's out there today, but most importantly, consistent with the city's standards for light containment.
Anyone have any comments or questions? Tell me your last name again.
Anderson, S-O-N. Sean, S-E-A-N, as in Sean Connery.
Okay, I heard you say you were part of the design team.
Correct.
And specifically for the fuel system.
Correct.
Can you speak to us about the traffic pattern intended?
Sure. So again, the current access, as you can see, where the existing fuel facility would be shown on this plan, all comes in off of that intersection, off of Walker, directly right into the fuel facility, and then exits back out onto Caricio and into the site. The tendency for members is to fuel first before going to the warehouse. It just proportionally seems to be the trend because, as you can imagine, if it is a busy day, you don't want to load up on a bunch of good produce, put it in your trunk, and then sit in the sun while you're waiting to get gas. So the anticipated circulation route for this site wouldn't be a whole lot different. It'd just move a bit further up the hill or a bit further to the south and use either the first entrance point off of Walker, there where the arrow is, or I suppose if one wanted to, they could go to the next entrance point and circulate back down through the parking, although that isn't really anticipated to be a main route for members. But that first left in is really what would be expected to be the first entrance point. And as you can see, the entrance to the actual queuing area is a bit further back, so the orientation has been flipped. I guess the reason for that partially was to allow for better movement of the fueling truck to get through the site, but there's also an added benefit that if there's a rare occasion that the line does back up for a limited amount of time, it's at least pushed back from that entrance from Walker, so it limits the potential for any kind of conflicts back onto the street. But again, given the the new size of the facility and the potential to add an additional row of dispensers if it ever became necessary, this is going to be much more effective at limiting any of those instances of queuing spilling out, or if it ever does hit its max, it'll dissipate much quicker than the existing facility would allow it to. So it just reduces those instances greatly. And then, as I mentioned before, with that second access off of Caricio, any of the members that do plan to go to the warehouse first, then to the gas station, have that benefit of being able to go directly to the station rather than have to recirculate back out onto Walker, or to potentially jam up that exit point onto Walker by wanting to make that left turn movement into a busy facility. So this just frees up the points of entrance from just about every direction.
I am familiar with this site. I've seen how that can back up on really busy days, and it does have an impact on Walker Road, very much so, as well as that primary entrance into the store. So I see this circulation plan as being a great improvement. I'm just wondering what kind of signage there will be to direct people to these areas as the primary entrance or a secondary entrance. Is there going to be something on the ground? Is it going to be a freestanding sign? Can you tell us any of that information?
At this time, there's no planned directional signage that's going to tell people the new entrance is over here. I think that it's because it's a member-based store, people are going to learn very quickly where the entrances are. Also, we got the added benefit of it being slightly elevated, so I think you'll see it from the moment you start coming down the hill back up towards the new site. Also, I would anticipate that most members are pretty familiar with the entrance off of Walker, but then also Caricio as an alternate route. So I think just very quickly, members will learn those access points. And that tends to be how things like this work for Costco, because, again, the members learn the site and learn the operation very quickly. It's one of the benefits of being a member organization.
Do you know if that existing facility will remain in service while this one's being constructed?
Correct. And then once this one's operational, then decommissioning and demolition will start to occur for the existing, and then turn that into parking.
And that requires removal of the tanks down below, right?
Correct.
Okay. Can you tell us anything about the landscape plan? And what its intent is?
Yeah. Not in any more detail than to simply state that the landscape architect is very familiar with the site, very familiar with the local flora of the area, and then was able to, or their mission was to try and essentially match the type and style of landscaping that's out there today. So it should feel consistent. It should feel seamless to what's already out there, and that's really the intent. And then any, for instance, water restrictions, they're familiar with and would have designed to. So all of that information was incorporated into the landscape plan. But that's about as much as I can speak to it not being a landscape.
Okay, yeah, I just wondered if there would be some plants that would tend to screen that, not just be decorative on the low-growing landscape, but something taller to provide a screen.
Well, you can see that around, especially the controller enclosure and around some of the entrance points. You do have more substantial planting, and what that will do is help to screen elements of the facility. As far as the gas station itself, it won't be as heavily screened, I suppose, to the northeast direction. For instance, we haven't lined that portion of the site with trees or high-growing plantings. But again, there's also an element of visibility that we want to maintain so that members can quickly identify where the facility is and know how to get there. So that was to the intent, that was more the intent.
Okay. I've got a question for you from the general information page of the fueling facility program. It does mention an employee and a supervisor. I'm just curious, is that the same person, or that might be the same person, or it might be two people?
There'll always be one employee at the site, and that employee will always be trained to be an attendant at the site. So whether it's the supervisor or someone else, it'll be someone that is, as I said, specifically trained to attend the site. And that training is everything from knowing how to do routine maintenance inspections to assisting members at the pump, assisting during fuel deliveries. So there needs to be exchange of receipts and certain information, just knowing how to take care of all of that stuff. But then lastly, being able to handle any emergency situations, whether it's a minor spill or something more significant. There's procedures in place. The attendee is always trained in all of those procedures. And as I said, whether it's the supervisor out there or the attendee, there will always be a supervisor in the warehouse that they'll have direct contact with as also part of those procedures. So,
All right. I noticed in paragraph 6, it talks about a monitoring system design. So if power is lost to the monitoring console, facility is shut down and will not operate, what actually is shut down and what would remain online?
What is shut down are the pumps, and so there's once all of that system shuts down, then the ability to essentially move fuel throughout the system stops, and so you don't have any risk of continuous movement of either fuel or pressure buildup in any portion of the system that could eventually lead to a failure that goes unmonitored. In order to prevent that, everything just stops.
Would the lighting remain on?
If the power shuts off, I don't know the exact specifics of emergency power to this site, but my understanding is that everything would shut off, and then in order to bring back elements back online, they would use a backup generator. But that actually I'd have to talk with the architect on. And
Yeah, that's my concern, if the lighting would remain on, if it's at night and this circumstance would arise. And
right, yeah, and so at night, there is a few lights that will remain on for security purposes. What happens is lighting is reduced to about 50%, and it's just and that's done by shutting off 50% of the lights, but only keeping lights on in the middle of the canopy. So again, the light spill is greatly reduced at that point, but the purpose or the reason is to allow for sufficient lighting for the security cameras that do remain running. Again, it's just for security purposes at that point, but the pumps are locked at that time as well when it's a non-operational hour. So again, the system stops. It's static at that point.
you see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. I saw that there was a net removal of material. Trying to find that information.
Yeah, correct. If I remember correctly, there's about 4,000 square feet of export from the site.
Yes. Right.
Correct.
Exactly.
Yeah, so always try to reuse or use as much excavation material as possible. In this case, we only need, from memory, about 2,000 or 2,500 square feet of the 6,500 square feet of cut that will be occurring. The rest, though, will be exported to a destination. I don't know off the top of my head, but will be prearranged. In this case, being a bigger facility and needing a little more space for things like the USTs, it's just kind of expected that they'll need to be a little more taken out of the ground. But
Do you know what would be the status of that export material from a fueling station? Is there any special criteria that falls under?
yeah, so any export that's coming from the existing fuel area will be tested for any potential contaminants before being offloaded, and then that's part of the decommissioning system or process required for the facility, and that's part of our decommissioning permit as well.
Okay. I suppose that the elevation isn't going to change of that higher lot. Is that going to remain the same?
Yeah, we're not trying to raise the elevation, just trying
Or
to
lower it.
or lower it. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
correct.
Will you remove all that asphalt that's there and put that in new?
Yeah, everything where the restaurant and that parking area exists it's all going to be cleaned up and all that stuff removed. As far as the parking to the south, I believe that's also going to be re-asphalted. I know that the condition of that parking is a bit spotty in areas.
So is all of the landscaping new as well for the upper and lower
Correct.
portion?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Sean, I've got a couple of questions for you addressing this letter that was sent from the Blackwells. I've had a lot of experience with oil companies because I worked for a bank and that was part of my thing. But they cite that there's a lot of, leakage and contaminated soil, but those are under a lot of older regulations. There's a lot of monitoring and sensors and
Exactly.
and so you would know if something leaks. It doesn't leak for 100 years and get in the water system anymore. I mean, I'm
Exactly.
just,
Correct.
from my experience.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you brought that up. So in the packet that we submitted, there's a general information sheet that gives a little more detail about the systems in place. But just kind of as a snapshot, the way Costco designs their gas stations is they're very, very robust, and there's multiple levels of redundancy to prevent any potential leakage into the soil, into the groundwater. That's through the piping and the tanks all being double lined. So there's the internal membrane where the fuel will pass through, and then an external membrane that essentially just acts as a safety net of sorts. But then there's monitoring points all throughout the system. There's also design. There's design elements, for instance, that should there be a link or a leak in the primary piping, that would actually flow back to a containment sump. So again, just making sure that nothing pools or remains static in any area that can't be reached. Everything is designed to drain or go back towards a point where it can be safely addressed. Sensors throughout the system, as I mentioned. And then as far as air quality is concerned, again, we install the site, I believe it's going to be called a VST grain machine. It's a unit that is near the vent stacks, and that actually helps to process any emissions that come out through pressure release and to clean them up to a very, very high standard. So it's a non-required piece of equipment that Costco elects to install in their stations just to ensure that no additional emissions, no additional leaks are coming from the station.
My second question was, it said that it creates more cuts in the sidewalk, but there's an existing entrance where it's going to be now, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it's not really adding any further cuts to the sidewalk or anything.
No, we're not altering any of the access points.
And that was just addressed, so I wanted that to come out.
No, I appreciate that.
Mr. Acting Chairman, I would like to ask Mr. Anderson, and I thought I had it, then I thought, no, after a few minutes, I don't have it. Then I went back to it. I have no idea, even though you made a good point of it. Now, are you adding one more string of double pumps
Yeah, so
over the existing?
More than the existing.
more than the existing, correct. So, well, it'll be 3 islands, 4 pumps deep, with the potential for an additional 5th row in the future should it be needed. So when you're looking at the plan there, you'll see the heavier line weights, and that's what's actually being proposed to be installed today. But in the future, this plan is actually beneficial that, should the demand require it, we can add a whole new set of dispensers to the back. And again, kind of going back to my opening statements, the real benefit or the reason for the gas station, the new gas station, or whenever Costco does an expansion, is just to do that, to provide more dispensers to the existing membership base. And it's kind of the way when you go into the warehouse, let's say Saturday morning, and finally the mob catches up with you, that they, and the lines start to build, they open up new cash registers to try and disperse that, disperse all the people that need to go through checkouts. The important thing to remember is that this gas station is only accessible to members, not to the general public, and that membership base remains, fairly consistent. It might increase over time gradually, but a relocated gas station or new gas station or expanded gas station doesn't create a trend of a whole bunch of new memberships. And so you don't have all of a sudden more people than ever joining the queue. Instead, it's taking that existing base and just giving them more options to check out, to pump their gas and get on through. And that's where you get the added efficiency. It's where the lines disperse faster. It's where the lines tend to remain shorter, because all those people that were previously waiting, the same group of people that were previously waiting, are now at a pump. So
if I may, Ray, presently there are 2 rows of dispensers and 4 lanes of traffic.
Yep.
And what will happen here, there will be 3 rows of dispensers and 6 lanes of traffic.
correct.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And a much larger queuing area as well. That's a great improvement, I think.
Yeah.
That help?
Yeah, I know I put a lot of information there. I hope I answered the question.
You're adding a row
Yes,
with
correct.
double pumps.
Correct.
Thank you. That's all I needed to know.
You're right. I get a little excited. I apologize.
My question is in regards to where the gas pumps are now, and that's going to be the new parking,
Correct.
where the people from that parking area step out with carts and whatever to get clear over here to Costco, and where the existing gas people who have filled are going to come out at the same part. I think that's the Boulevard stop right in front of Joe's Furniture.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of foot traffic, baskets, those things, the big,
Right.
flatbed carts, everything happening right at that spot.
Right. And so the new parking is, the idea is that that's going to be the employee parking.
Okay,
And
that's right, you did say that.
yeah,
Sorry.
and really whether members use it or not, I'm guessing it's going to be unlikely, because when you already see that those spots are being used by the employees,
You did say the employees.
yeah, and there's free spots near the warehouse, that's where you're going to want to go. So
Because that's quite a walk.
yeah, no, that's all, like I said, primarily going to be for employee parking. If a member chooses to go out there, we can't stop them, but I'm sure they'll quickly learn that there's better parking options near the warehouse.
Looks like they even put in an employee exercise program.
Well, the parking where employees basically are supposed to park now on the far side of Costco itself, that even is a long walk for a lot of the people in our area, healthy people.
Right.
You're
So
going to have
that's my
club cars
concern.
going around picking up people, right?
Yeah, golf
it-
carts
it
are
is
the
a
next
Is that a
step.
condition we can add?
It is a concern. Many of us
Right.
drive around and round waiting for someone to back out.
And this should, yeah,
That's exactly
you
right.
should see an improvement in that. once
Yes,
you
in
have-
fact, you've added 94 parking spaces,
Correct.
so that should help.
Yeah, and typically, you have about 80 to 100 employees during operating hours, so you can see how that very well aligns with the demand, the employee demand during a
Sure
typical
does.
shift. Yeah.
Yep.
So should help a lot.
Well, thank you, Mr. Anderson. I'd like to see if there's anybody from the public that cares to come up and speak to this. Please, come on up and state your name and address, sir.
My name is Julian Blackwell. I live at 3665 Lynx Meadow Drive, Prescott, which is just down the road from Coliseo
To the south.
to the south. I have a couple concerns. One is I'm not sure on the parking. There's a lot here on south of, can you move that over just a little bit down? Is that going to become a parking lot? That area?
That is what our plan shows. Yes, sir.
Okay, so are the employees going to park there, or I'm not sure when he talks about new employee parking or exactly what's going on.
Okay, we'll get that clarified.
Okay. Number two, when you turn on Coliseo, make the left turn from Walker onto Coliseo, further up there the road curves. People no, not that way. Walker Road, as it goes south other direction, past
Right there.
Coliseo, it curves
Yes, sir.
quite a bit. You can't see around that corner, so people coming around there, this becomes a congested area where you're trying to make a left turn and people are headed north on that road. They can't see the traffic turning. It is quite a congested area. My concern is, and people come up Walker Road, they go very fast. We've called several times to get police out there to police the speed because it drops down there. Most people are going through at a pretty high rate of speed. So I think that's going to be a potential hazard. Number two, are you going to do anything about the panhandlers? You're moving them closer to our residential area. There's always panhandlers right there at the entrance where you go into the parking area for the gas pumps. There's always panhandlers on the corners. So now if you're going to move the area for the cars to go in for the gasoline, you're going to move the panhandlers closer to the residential areas, which is not good. And one of the other things, I hope there's going to be a better care of the landscaping than there is now. It's pretty bad. I like a lot.
Excuse me, Mr. Blackwell, that landscaping you're speaking of, is that the south section where that restaurant building is now?
Yeah, that's the south section where the restaurant building is now. Also, all the way down to the existing entrance for the gas station. That landscaping is not really well taken care of. It's pretty shoddy looking. Now, a lot of the people from the street where I live walk over in that direction. And so this is going to create a problem for us as we try to take our daily walks, as that people try to stay in good shape. So I'm concerned about changes to the area as you build in this in, and it's not just one row, it's double the amount of gas pumps there. You're going from, if I'm not mistaken, you're going from 12 to 24. So that's double.
Yes, sir.
Those are my concerns.
Okay.
And I wrote you a letter also, which.
Yes, I've got a copy of it here. I'm going to address that more specifically in a moment.
Okay.
I would like to ask Ms. Peterson about landscaping of that part down there. I see it's not on the plan as proposed. Do they have an obligation there for landscaping? Is that under your jurisdiction?
For landscaping at the current entrance, where the current entrance is for the current gas station?
No, ma'am, this would be that
Talking about the
south
proposed.
section where the new parking's gonna be.
Okay, right.
Between, I don't know if there's a street name for that one entrance there where that's, you go up a hill there. It's kind of narrow.
So the Land Development Code has landscaping, minimum landscaping requirements both for new commercial projects, developments, as well as screening of parking lots.
Right.
So open parking lot areas have their own screening landscape requirements too by code. And keep in mind, with the conditional use permit, you can impose conditions on the permit. So if there are specific concerns that you think warrant additional conditions to address the proposed project,
Okay.
that's appropriate too, so.
Okay, if we did nothing in that regard, regarding that landscaping, would that still be a requirement in this case?
Correct. There will be a landscaping requirement to shield the parking area, any open parking lot area
Okay,
between the parking and the street,
okay,
and
Perhaps-
adjacent properties, and then also on the site in general. So there's a minimum square footage landscape requirement, as well as types of shrubs, ground cover, trees. Not all the landscaping has to be greenery, so
Right.
the Land Development Code defines landscape as both greenery and it could be rocks, decorative
Suppose we should
materials.
say hardscape these days.
Right. So it can be a combination of hardscape and softscape or green plants.
All right.
On
Yes, sir.
additional question, right now, there's a four-way stop where you turn and go off of Walker Road. Will it be a four-way stop further south?
I don't know that there have been any traffic, and that might be a question for Costco if they're proposing anything. I don't think there have been any changes proposed by our engineers yet at this time during the pre-application conference.
I would think that would be a helpful
Well,
addition to you.
getting in and out of our development has changed drastically since Sam's Club closed down. The amount of traffic going into Costco has really made it difficult to get through that four-way stop intersection. And that's the concern. If you move it further up, then it's going to be even more difficult for us to get in and out of our own homes. Because it's not shown on the map, but it's not more than another couple hundred feet from Coliseo to Lynx Meadow Drive.
Mr. Blackwell, as I see it, I think that traffic is going to be greatly alleviated because that's the backup point right now, is that the way that fueling area is arranged. When that traffic for the fueling backs up into that driveway, and it even backs up close to Walker Road, and then people can't turn in. But with that fuel station gone, there won't be that much traffic going down there, or at least it won't be turning into that fueling area because it's gone.
Well, you're just moving it further down to
Right.
Coliseo, which is even closer to our development.
I see that.
And it's going to be more difficult to turn at Coliseo than it is at the other entrance on Lycée.
I don't, Ms. Peterson, is there any jurisdiction that your department would have in regards to traffic calming in that area?
The traffic engineer could potentially impose, right, so if this is approved and the project moves forward, they'll need to submit those building permit and engineering permit plans. That'll involve review by our traffic engineer and other staff from Public Works Department. So they would take a closer look at any concerns and any possible need for some kind of traffic calming as
Mhm.
well.
I believe that's a 45 mile per hour in that area? Is it 35? 35?
35 miles an hour.
Okay.
Go out there and measure it sometimes. You'll find most people are going 65.
Not me.
One other area of concern I have
Closer
is
to the mic, please.
one other area of concern I have is the amount of time that you give the residents of the area to consider these proposals. I got 4 days from the time the letter arrived at my house. I walked over to the area to find the posted placard for the change, and there's no diagram there. It's very little information on there other than we're going to make a change somewhere in here. It's not very clear. I didn't get the actual diagram until I called yesterday and got that sent to me email. So most of the people on my street some of them had not received the letter. Some of the people are out of town. You know, you give people 4 days notice. They have other things they're doing. They can't get here for this meeting. So I think you need to do something in addition to whatever your rules are to let people know 4 days is just not enough time.
Well, I appreciate your comments. I don't know what we can do about that part. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you've gotten more information to consider. I would like to look at your letter if we could, to be more specific about it, because I think some of these things may be a concern to you, but they may be addressed by the Costco Corporation. And the fuel station design for the maximum number of cars and tractor trailers versus residential neighborhood, well, really, I see this as an improvement on the traffic arrangement. As Mr. Anderson said, they don't anticipate a surge in membership, but it'll just serve the existing membership, and the cars will queue for a shorter period of time.
Okay. I live there and I go past
Yes,
this
sir.
every day.
Yes, sir.
I don't think most people are going to take that small driveway in the middle up to the site. They're going to all take Caricio. And I see that as a real problem because, like I said, the Walker Road curves there. You've got traffic coming north at a high rate of speed, and you got people trying to go across that traffic. I think there are going to be accidents there.
Well, I'll tell you what, we can make sure that we can emphasize that. If we make a motion to pass this, we can emphasize that the traffic engineer needs to take a look at that. I don't know what action would be appropriate, but we certainly hear your concern, and it's mine as well.
Okay.
As far as the fuel station being an eyesore, I believe that canopy, new canopy, is going to be just like the one that is there now. Would that be correct, Mr. Anderson? Please, you can come forward. Mr. Blackwell, let him respond to that.
The canopy design will be a newer version of Costco standard, so it'll be still a flat metal roof with similar fascia and galvanized steel columns. There'll be slight differences. We won't have the mansard portion on the top of it, but the reason for that is actually, again, to benefit the canopy itself. It's a ongoing maintenance issue. The reason why they don't want to do that, mainly birds will roost in there, create a lot of waste, and it's hazardous to clean out.
Mm-hmm.
So the new design is actually better for that.
An improvement, is it?
Exactly.
I hope it doesn't leak either.
No, it'll be much tighter in that regard.
Just to put that into perspective, the
Yes, sir.
existing canopy now is lower in elevation than the base of the new site. So
Right.
it's actually going to be more visible
Right.
from the houses
Right.
than it is now.
Well, we can certainly emphasize that landscaping and its screening effect.
Yes.
All right? Too many lights on day and nights. I'm sure they've got a lighting schedule that will be the same for that up there. I believe the lights are, I don't think they turn them all off at night because there's probably some security lighting there.
But again, that lighting is below the elevation of the new site.
Yes, sir.
So you don't see that as much. This is now going to be at the level of the houses on Lynx Meadow Drive. So the lights are going to be above.
Right. And they're shielded, so I guess we need to have, it would be nice to have some information about how that light pattern exists.
I would like to have that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that is something that staff would take a look at as well, because there are requirements in our code as it is right now regarding that kind of lighting.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I hope there's no robbery there.
I
We
hope
all
so
do.
too.
Yeah. And as I see it, as far as the sidewalks, I don't see any changes to the sidewalks that are there now according to their plan.
At the time I wrote that, the plans were not available that I could find.
I got you. Yes, sir. Okay. Okay, and then what the concern about the underground storage tanks, that system has been greatly improved in the years since, you referenced the Kill Brothers Oil Company fuel station. I don't know what year they were in operation. 2018.
2018.
What state was that in?
Indiana, Illinois, and Kentucky.
We hope we've got some more strict requirements for that. In fact, I'd like to let Mr. Anderson speak to that. What is in the design to address leaking fuel tanks?
Again, the design of the tank and pipe system actually includes an outer membrane to wrap the actual product containment area. So if it's the tank, you've got your cell where all the fuels are held, where you have your pipes running, you've got your primary pipe. We have an outside, tank and pipe around those components, so that should there ever be a breach in either the tank or the piping, there's already something on the outside of it that's going to catch it. That space is also monitored. It's actively monitored. So in the fuel tank itself, it's a brine system. If it raises or lowers, there's monitors to tell us when that happens, and that could indicate either an outer shell breach or an inner shell breach. Never seen both. And if any of those happen, again, the whole system stops and until we figure out what's going on, and then it can be fixed before there's ever a leak.
How are you situated to prevent there being a puncture in the membrane? Because you've got sharp rock on at least the outside.
Right. So the tank and piping is all fiberglass, which makes it less rigid than steel, but actually it's more safe that way. But second, the pit and the lines where the tank and the piping go will actually be filled with pea gravel. The reason why is that pea gravel actually isn't sharp, but also is it's safer, so that if there was ever any kind of shift or pressure change within any of those areas, the pea gravel could actually shift as well. Now that, just so you're aware, would actually cause a stop in the system, so it wouldn't just go on running if anything were to shift.
Mm-hmm.
But the system in that environment, there's less risk of it rupturing or breaking. That's the safest way to install it, really. But any change in any of those components would be noted, stopped, and then everything would have to be retested before it gets back up and running. Yeah.
So then to summarize, the tank is double walled and the piping is double walled as well.
Mm-hmm, correct.
And it's all monitored.
Absolutely.
Has there
24/7.
been any leak concern? Has anything developed in the lower level?
I'm sorry, the lower level.
The existing facility?
Oh, no, nothing that we've been made aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's monitored just like this upper portion would be?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that's a pretty robust system down there as well. So it's not an old steel tank.
Mm-hmm.
System.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Blackwell. We've looked at your letter and we appreciate your comments, and we're going to emphasize some of these concerns, I think, in our motion.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else that'd like to make a comment? Anyone else that's here? Staff have any comments? I think an appropriate motion would ask that the landscaping emphasize screening of this property. I believe the lighting is going to be addressed per code right now, which is adequate. Would you say so, Ms. Peterson?
Well, again, the Land Development Code has regulations in place to ensure compliance with the dark sky ordinance. So it will be reviewed in detail at the time that they submit the detailed lighting plan.
So the dark sky ordinance doesn't necessarily address the glare to a neighborhood and adjacent neighborhood.
What it might not address is that difference in elevation. So there is that difference in elevation from the current site to that raised site, which is above the street level and above the adjacent neighborhood.
And as far as you know, are there some accessories available to shield those particular light fixtures? Mr. Worley.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I'm George Worley, I'm the planning manager. Most of the lighting review that we do in the planning section I handle, so I'll try and answer the questions. The Land Development Code has a whole set of criteria on glare, on the ability of light to spill beyond the fixtures themselves and off of the site. All of those things can be addressed through a combination of landscaping, recessed lighting under the canopy, and shielding that can be applied to any freestanding light fixtures that are proposed, and there are a number of them proposed. We apply all of those during the staff review, so if landscaping can help, we will emphasize additional landscaping in those areas to help screen nearby properties. It becomes a little more difficult when you have a situation where nearby residential properties may be at a lower elevation than a commercial facility, and some of that can be addressed even with low-level landscaping. If you just can picture angles of light beams, the low-level landscaping often is enough to shield those adjacent houses, so we apply that as a primary fix, along with the requirement for shields on the light fixtures themselves.
Okay. Any more questions in that regard? Nope. So as I see it, the concerns are landscaping. I think the lighting's addressed, and traffic calming. Right? If someone wants to make a motion.
I have another person that wants to speak.
Oh, please, come on up. I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
My name is Tom Halberick. I live at 3645 Lynx Meadow Drive. And my concern, if you could bring up that map again of the area.
Okay. That's the map you need?
The one that you had before.
The aerial photo?
Yes, please. As you brought up with landscaping that you're going to, well, I have two questions. First of all, the property on the southern part where you're going to have the additional parking. On the other side of that, does Costco own that too, or?
I don't know the answer to that.
No. Okay, so it would be ideal if that additional parking was actually at the other corner. That would alleviate some of the problems we'd have viewing or the lighting for those people living, residential neighbors in the area there. So if that's out of the question, you talked about higher or taller landscaping where the existing fuel pumps are now to block out on the hill there coming in from 69. But how about taller landscaping in the back around the back parking area? That would alleviate some of the, I don't want to use the word eyesore, but it would make a better visual for people living where we do.
Okay.
That can be a possibility. I also don't see an alleviation in traffic because most people are going to come in and out in the existing exit that they use right now. Even though it's a circular, they're going to be going in, they're going to come out by Joe's Furniture, they're either going to go into Costco, do their shopping, but they're still going to come out the same access road, or exit road there. So I don't see a particular alleviation of the traffic flow. And Walker Road is just a 2-lane. And there is a lot of people with the existing speed limit going over it. That is a problem. The other thing with landscaping, if you go over the existing landscaping, the existing care of it and maintenance leaves something to be desired. So that's another issue. So if you're going to add additional landscaping to it, it also takes a lot of additional care.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So those are my concerns.
All right.
As far as the landscaping, if that's a city ordinance, there's compliance officers. If you call the city, they'll send somebody out to look at it. If it's not meeting with the criteria, they're obligated to do something.
They are. Well, for example, I've called, and several people on our residents have called about the care and maintenance of the landscaping that they put in new along Walker Road between 69 and Lynx Meadow Drive. And their comments, for the most part, is it's the adjacent residents' responsibility to take care of it. So you have a wall there. You've got the gravel landscaping, but it's full of weeds.
And I'm sorry, which side of
That's going on.
Walker Road are you speaking of?
Well, actually on both sides of Walker Road. So it would be right along, well, actually where Costco is, that's maintained. But from where the gas station is all the way down to our area is not maintained on the other side.
I don't know if there's an HOA there you can contact.
Well, that's the problem. They say, go see the HOA.
Yeah, right.
And the HOA said it's up to individual residents. So
Mr.
that's where
Chairman,
that went.
Yes, sir.
just for a little clarification, within rights-of-way, so within the Walker Road right-of-way, the responsibility lies with the adjacent properties. Within an individual commercial property, that's solely the responsibility of that commercial property owner. So we can enforce landscaping requirements, maintenance requirements on the commercial properties. The rights-of-way, it's harder because our city code actually says the adjacent property owners are responsible for a portion of that maintenance. And that does become difficult. People don't know where the line is. They don't know where their point of responsibility exists. So that takes a lot of extra effort on our enforcement folks than it does if it's strictly within a commercial site. We show up, we bring them the landscape plan, we say, where are these trees? And they have to respond.
Sure. We didn't have a full set of plans, and I did hear you say, or Ms. Peterson say, that was a preliminary landscape plan. It did not include that southern part where that new parking area is going to be. I think that it's appropriate that we address that in any motion that we might make. And I think that's just very appropriate. So again, landscaping and traffic calming are the things that we might want to consider in any motion that we make.
Okay. Well, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Mr. Sheets.
Yeah, George Sheets from Planning and Zoning. I'm on the various code committees, and I am aware of some of the codes related to night lighting, and that upper parking lot will probably not have employees there at night since Costco is closed at night, and the employees would choose to park closer, as well as all the lanes of fuel pumps. They may not need to be operational, and so our city code normally requires that lighting be reduced at 10 o'clock at night, or even earlier if the place would opt to during the winter seasons when it's dark. And so the lighting should be very minimal up at the very top parking lot after a particular time of night, according to city code. So there will be different lighting, night lighting applications depending upon the operations of the facility there. Is that correct, George?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. We do have a requirement that when the facility is shut down, that the site lighting be reduced to 25% of its full brightness. So that needs to be adjusted. They talked about 50%. There are some other conditions that could be applied. Generally speaking, we don't put those conditions on a facility that does shut down at a particular time.
And they're their hours, the latest their hours are at that fuel facility is 9 o'clock, and that's when they shut down, and I guess they're not going to change their hours. They're going to remain the same.
We're not aware of a change in hours of operation, so that would be the time when the lighting would need to be reduced to that 25% level.
Right, okay. Okay, so, yeah, what we can do, we can have a motion to approve this conditional use permit with some conditions, or we can table this and wait for a full board if we want, or we can reject it. So those are our options. I think it would be appropriate to emphasize the landscaping and its screening function for the fuel facility area as well as that south parking area. We can also emphasize traffic calming and leave that up to staff to address. So those are my thoughts on a motion.
Okay, shall we move to approve CUP 1901?
Well, you're going to have to speak into the microphone if you want to do that.
Move to approve CUP 19001 with the following conditions. Okay?
Yes, ma'am?
How do we want to state the conditions then?
The landscape screening is to be emphasized for the
Light screening,
landscaping.
landscaping,
I think we've got our lighting addressed already.
okay.
I think as is fine.
Following conditions,
Yes, ma'am. Landscaping to emphasize the screening function of landscaping at the
Yeah.
traffic facility as well as the south parking lot.
to emphasize landscaping conditions with the emphasis on,
Screening?
how do we want to state that?
Screening the
With the emphasis on screening the
fuel facility
fuel facility
and the south parking lot.
and the south parking lot
From the residences, the adjacent residents.
from the adjacent residents. Do we have any other conditions?
Also, I think there should be a good traffic study, because I understand what Mr. Blunt said.
Condition that of additional
Should have done a
traffic
study of the
studies.
Traffic flow to determine whether needs something other than just.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
I
Worley?
don't believe, I agree the traffic needs to be looked at, and that will be looked at as part of the building permit review. I don't believe you need to make that as a condition unless you want something beyond what our normal.
We
code
just want to
requires.
emphasize it, that's all we want to do.
We have the emphasis, I don't believe you need to include it in the motion itself. And just for clarification, the word emphasize you're using on landscaping, what you're talking about is enhanced landscaping. Additional
Enhancing
or thicker landscaping on those areas. Is that correct?
Okay,
Very
you got
good.
that? So enhancing
It's clear,
landscape.
it's clear enough,
I'll
thank you.
restate the motion
And, okay,
once it's done.
now do we have everything in there we need?
Let me restate the motion and see if it's correct.
Okay,
And let me find that first page.
to approve CUP.
I understand the motion is to approve CUP 18-002. Oh, I'm sorry.
1900-1.
I'm looking at minutes. Here it is.
CUP 19-001.
Yes, ma'am. To approve CUP 19-001. The owner applicant is Costco. And we want to approve the application with enhanced landscaping for screening purposes at the traffic facility as well as the south parking lot. Is that the motion?
Mr. Chair,
I heard, yes, ma'am.
point of clarification, could I
Okay.
read what I had?
Sure.
Move to approve CUP 19-001 with the following condition: enhancing landscape screening at the fuel facility as well as the south parking lot from the adjacent residencies.
I don't know if the adjacent residences is necessary in that motion,
I think it is, because
Okay.
they're the ones most concerned with it. I mean,
and let's leave it there. Let's leave it in there. Thank you, Ms. Chavez.
Second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye, raise your hand.
I am not
Aye.
raising my hand.
Okay,
But I'm saying aye.
But he's saying aye, so that was unanimous approval with conditions.
Need to vote twice.
Thank you. If there is no other business here, Ms. Peterson, did you want to say something? No? Okay, I'll look forward to the landscaping. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
A second.
There's a motion and a second to adjourn. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.